Norwich City head to Dean Court this Saturday to face AFC Bournemouth. Only the 5th time these sides will have met in the league since 1960. So there's some stat for you. Norwich City have only been beaten once in the subsequent fixtures that I'm talking about in terms of this millennium. The good news, I suppose, for Norwich is that they do have players back from the injury struggles. The club released a video this week that showed Tim Krul, Tom Trybull, Mario Vrancic, Alex Tettey and Onel Hernandez all returning to team training, although worryingly Ben Godfrey wasn't in that, so neither was Grant Hanley. So the issues at centre-back may persist for now. With that in mind, this is sort of the lineup I've gone for this weekend in terms of perhaps what I expect to be it prior to any further injury news or selection issues that Daniel Farke mentions in his press conference on Friday. So we'll start with Tim Krul in between the sticks. It looks like he's going to be fit enough for a return, which is great news. He's sort of started the first week of the international break with a bit of light training. The club again posting pictures on their Instagram this time of Tim Krul sort of going through some light gym work for them at Colney. The back four, I think it will be as you were, essentially, with Lewis on the left, Aarons on the right, and Amadou and Godfrey making up the partnership. Of course, Ibrahim Amadou, plenty of debate and discussion around him at the moment. Plenty of people suggesting that Daniel Farke, when he obviously has the options available to him, should push Amadou forward into that more defensive midfield position, a position that Norwich have struggled to really leave a mark on, I suppose, and it's been an issue of concern all season in terms of somebody who can screen that back four efficiently to make them a bit more of a solid defensive unit. And that said, I have gone with Tom Trybull and Mo Leitner. Hopefully Trybull now with a couple of weeks of training in and will be fit enough to play on Saturday. Alex Tettey, of course, came in against Manchester City, did a sterling job, but I think Trybull just offers perhaps a little bit more in terms of mobility and in terms of possession as well, which I think is going to be pivotal in this game, as I'll come on to later. And then Mo Leitner next to him, again, another player who I think, and Dave Hannant made this point in the first episode of Terrace Talk, that perhaps with Kenny McLean, there was a lack of balance in that midfield, but Mo Leitner partnered alongside someone who's a bit more defensively minded, I suppose, in terms of the way they play, tends to suit him a lot better. So if Norwich can partner him with Trybull, they may get the very best out of him. And then the front four is, as you were, the usual suspects in terms of Cantwell, Steepman, Buendia, all behind Pukki. This is going to be a big game for them this weekend as well. I think the way AFC Bournemouth play in terms of that 4-4-2 sort of style, where Eddie Howe looks to try and hit teams on the break quickly, can expose a lot of space for teams, particularly centrally, and for me that is where Norwich City are going to score goals. They're going to get plenty of chances this weekend. I think if anyone is a fan of XG metrics or not, then you can see that Bournemouth do concede a lot of chances, particularly at home. So Norwich may get a bit more joy from an offensive sense this weekend, and that is why they're going to be so reliant on their front four, I feel. The last meeting between these two sides came last year, actually, in the Carabao Cup. Norwich City going to the Vitality Stadium, as it's known these days, and being defeated 2-1. I think anyone who was at that game or anyone who witnessed that game will probably say that it could have gone quite differently had a different set of circumstances. I think Jordan Rhodes missed an absolute sitter, Dennis Shrabeni missed a couple of good chances as well, and Eddie Howe came out of that performance with a glowing reference for Daniel Farke's Norwich City, saying that he basically thought they were Premier League quality. Well, this is going to be a game in the Premier League where Norwich can test whether those references actually match up to it on Saturday. Speaking of Bournemouth then, let's have a look. This is their previous 11 from the 1-0 defeat against Arsenal. They started Ramsdale in goal, someone who's emerged out of nowhere, really spent the back end of last season on loan at AFC Wimbledon, helped in their dramatic survival in League One. He's recently played for the England under-21, so he's rated very, very highly. A back four of Sergio Rico, captain Steve Cook, Nathan Ake, and Jack Stacey as well, who they signed from Luton. Midfield four, Josh King, Billing, who Stuart Webber will know well from Huddersfield, Jefferson Lerma and Harry Wilson, who I'm sure all Norwich fans will know from his stint at Derby last year, with Callum Wilson and Solanke up top. Now, when you think Bournemouth and we think about what they've done in the Premier League, it's all been about installing a philosophy, ensuring there's a bit of stability, getting a unique recruitment process in place, and cast aside the billionaire owner for a second. there are plenty of similarities between what Bournemouth are doing and what Norwich City aspire to do. So maybe Norwich can use that template that Eddie Howe has created at Bournemouth to place into their own club, albeit on a different level. I mean, the recruitment strategies are a bit different. Bournemouth tend to go for players who either aren't quite fulfilling potential at top clubs or who are exceeding expectations at lower clubs, and recruit them and basically put them into a system and leave Eddie Howe to individually improve them to ensure that they progress. It's quite forward thinking. It's been quite successful for them, and what we have in Eddie Howe is someone who likes technical players and has basically built a philosophy off that. It's built off playing through balls to the strikers and less so about getting crosses into the box and being dynamic from that perspective. If we have a look at some of their strengths, they've scored 5 goals at home from set pieces this year. No doubt that is because of the inclusion of Harry Wilson into their side. I think he scored, from memory, a spectacular one against Manchester City, to name but one. The last win for Bournemouth came in that 3-1 win over Southampton. I think Angus Gunn made a couple of mistakes in that one, but they've played 3 games in League and Cup since and haven't managed to win a game. So perhaps Norwich are playing them at slightly the right time in terms of a form perspective. They obviously started the season like a train. I think they were up into the Champions League places after that Southampton win. Obviously a massive win for their supporters as well in terms of that local derby. But if we look at the areas where Norwich can exploit this weekend, they're not a team who really are competent at retaining possession. They do tend to monopolise that a little bit and do concede a lot of territory in terms of possession. They want to spring on the counter-attack, and with the players that I'm going to come on to mention, you sort of understand why. It's interesting that they've had the second highest percentage of shots inside the 6-yard box at home this season of any team in the Premier League, and they've scored 6 goals from open play. So a lot of their goals are coming from set pieces or well-worked moves as well. So let's move on then to 2 of their key operators. I mean, we could probably pinpoint any of the front 4 really in terms of King, Harry Wilson, Callum Wilson or Dominic Solanke. I've gone for Callum Wilson first and foremost. Played for England in midweek in that game against Bulgaria. Probably unlucky not to add to his England tally. I think he tweeted that afterwards. Already got 5 goals in this Premier League campaign, so hot on the heels of Teemu Pukki, who of course is on 6. Hasn't managed an assist this season, but does take on average about 2 shots per game, which is quite a high ratio for any Premier League striker, to be completely honest. Not particularly great pass success rate with 62.5%, which isn't great from a creative aspect, but perhaps shows Bournemouth's willingness to take risks in the final third. And as I alluded to, though, that pass success is almost coincided with the fact that he's got 1.4 key passes per game, which is very, very creative. I think that's around the numbers of, or just below the numbers that Jack Grealish is producing for Aston Villa at the moment. So a source of creativity as well as a goal scorer, and just likes to occupy that space between the centre-back and the full-back, similar to Pukki, to try and work an angle for goal. The second player I've gone for is Josh King, who's of course an explosive winger, scored a goal for Norway against Spain in the week that has helped their qualifying campaign. 2 goals for him, 2 assists, absolutely rapid. We've seen him at Blackburn previously. Averages 1 shot per game, so a bit less, but 3 dribbles. So you can see just how his game goes. Very direct, very astute at what he does in working 1v1 situations and trying to work openings to make inroads into the box. I think this is going to be a very expansive game of football. So I'd probably put money on a 0-0 at the moment. Both sides who perhaps are better going forward than they are defensively. I think Bournemouth scored the most goals outside of the top 6 last season, but also conceded a fair whack as well. So their route to stability has been through implementing a style, their own style, and scoring plenty of goals. And that's probably music to the ears of Norwich City fans, who are almost hoping their team can do the same. Eddie Howe, of course, a very astute manager. How long is he going to stay at Bournemouth for? That's the big question. Is there going to be a team that takes the punt on him? I'm not quite sure as of yet, but this is going to be a very difficult proposition. Another well-oiled, effective Premier League outfit who on their day has the ability to really hurt Norwich City, and as they come back from the international break off of a 5-1 drubbing to Aston Villa, they'll be keen to improve. Hopefully we'll have a lot more operators available to them, 4 or 5 potentially, which will make this game far more even. I think it's certainly got, if you're a neutral at least, certainly got the makings of an absolute classic down at Dean Court. They've got 11 points from 8 games and sit in 10th position. So Norwich City will be hoping to add to their Premier League points tally this time around. But that it was your scout report, your predicted 11 for this week's encounter between Norwich City and Bournemouth. Will be across the weekend. Of course, pinken.com, all the various social channels as well to follow us on. And if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you leave a like and subscribe as well. We've got some fantastic content coming your way soon. Thank you very much, and I'll see you soon.